All right, excited to get the first Mastermind event of the year kicked off. Gonna be discussing luxury. We have Percy wandering around. Just pat him if you're feeling stressed out. We've got two incredible panelists. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves and then we'll jump right in. Jen, you wanna?
Oh, okay, I thought you were gonna have Adam go first.
No, you go first.
Okay,
Let's just spend the whole time arguing who goes first. Introduce themselves.
My name
Jen
is...
came prepared.
I mean, this is just to take notes with everything you say.
Okay.
Yeah. So my name's Jen Waters. I am a listing partner with the Young Team. I recently have started heading up our luxury sales department here on the team. Been with them for 6 years. Had the pleasure of getting to know Adam through deals and just the Youngs, and excited to talk to you guys today about luxury real estate.
My name's Ryan Young. No, I'm kidding.
The way my mom's looking at
you. Terry and I go way back. I'm Adam Kaufman, and God, I've been doing this 36 years, which is incredible. It's the greatest job. I love what I do every day. I get up, I have fun, and I consider myself very lucky. So.
And you said 36 years. How long have you been the number one spot?
Probably the last 20. My goal was to be number one in my company, which was Realty One at the time, by the time I was 30. And I did it when I was 28. So, but last 25 years. Something like that, yeah.
Incredible. All right, let's jump into it. Adam, we'll start with you. When you think about luxury real estate in Northeast Ohio, how do you define it, and what actually makes something luxury beyond price?
So great question. It's interesting, guys. The definition over the past sort of 5 years has really changed in terms of luxury real estate. I was an anomaly. 25 years ago, if I sold 6 or 7 houses over $1 million, that was a huge deal. I mean, big deal. And now, $1 million price tags are just sort of the norm. You look in the MLS every day, you look at the hot sheet, invariably every day there's going to be 1, 2, or 3 houses that are $1 million and above. So luxury has kind of changed. But I would say that for where we live in Northeast Ohio, we have a lot of really great real estate. And I would say luxury real estate are any of the houses that are sort of standout houses, that really make an impact, that say something. And a house is like a person. It's got its own personality. It speaks for itself. And I think luxury homes really speak for themselves. I think they all have great personalities, and that's what's appealing for me about luxury homes.
Jen, what about for you? How do you define it?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think we've seen such a spike in homes over $1 million.
Crazy.
It's wild. But for me, very similar perspective. Luxury is not necessarily about how big a home is or how extravagant it is, but it's more about like the intentionality of it, the design, the level of finishes, and how somebody would live in it. Luxury is also, a lifestyle too, and it speaks to the buyer who's going to love that lifestyle, and I think it does stand out in that way when you think about it.
100%.
Cool. All right, Jen, let's start with you. Your story is probably a little bit more recent.
Yep.
How did you enter the luxury space? Was it intentional, opportunistic, or natural evolution of your business?
I would say it was probably the natural evolution of my business. When I started real estate, I was actually working in Medina for Howard Hanna. And I started in a new construction down there, probably a mid-level builder, the 500s or so. And when I moved up here to join the Young Team, I started working new construction again, and it was more custom forward. So I got to meet a lot of clientele. I started going to all of the building meetings. So I just wanted to understand the new construction process, finishes, the quality of the build, and really just soaked up all the knowledge. And with that, I started meeting all the clients, building rapport, building trust, understanding how the homes are built. And then with that, it just spiraled into building these relationships with those clientele that led to selling their existing homes, referrals to their friends, that, and it just kind of grew from there.
Love it. Adam, what about for yourself?
So, I don't know if you know my history. Real estate was my hobby. I started as a kid when I was young. I was 11 years old. My parents were looking for a house. They dragged me around. And anyway, that's how I got interested in it. But I think early on, I liked the bigger houses. I liked the architecture. I liked just their feeling. Everything was different. They were more exciting. I found the people a little more exciting. So I knew I wanted to be in that luxury market. And that was sort of my goal, was to focus on that luxury market. Now, interestingly, what I learned very early on is that's great. You can be in the luxury market, but you have to have a common knowledge of the entire market. You really have to understand the whole market, because the whole market is sort of a congruous market that all plays into itself. And if you just understand one little aspect of the market and don't understand the whole market, you're going to be in trouble, because the markets play off of each other. So quickly I learned that. I also started my business. When I started, there was no internet. There was a little MLS book that we all carried around, and it basically, the cover of the MLS book said, if you give this to anybody, you're going to be fined $1,000. Like, that was a big no-no. That was our information, and that's what we coveted. But I learned that early on that the luxury buyers, the buyers that I wanted to work with and the buyers I wanted to attract and the sellers I wanted to attract, were actually coming into open houses in more of a mid-level range. And the reason why is they were shopping the value of their house. So all these move-up buyers would be out on Sundays looking at open houses, but they wouldn't be looking at the real expensive houses. They would be looking at the houses that were more within where they were living, and I met more buyers that way. So that's how I quickly learned that this is where I need to position myself, and it just sort of fed off of itself. The more business I did, the more homes that I listed, I was able to build that niche, that luxury niche that I wanted to build.
And when would you say, do you remember at a certain point where it was all right, now you are officially luxury?
Well, I mean, I can remember every sale till the first one. The first house I ever sold was 31100 South Woodland over here in Pepper Pike. First official house. Before, I used to help people sell their houses by owner. And I'll tell you a great story about that. Real quickly, if you want to hear a great real estate story, I was 16 years old, and my word had gotten out there that I helped people sell houses by owner. I had gotten a call from people on a street called Chesterton, and they said, we're selling our house. Come over, let us know what you think. I went over, I let them know what I thought of the house. And I said, here's what we need to do. We need to place ads here. Long story short, the house sold. They sold the house by owner in basically 2 days. And there was another couple that lived on North Park Boulevard in Shaker. Now, this is 1986. You got to remember, this is 1986. So these houses are expensive. So this couple calls me and they said, we live on North Park and Shaker, and we want to sell our house, and we heard about you. The people on Chesterton gave us your name. Can we talk to you? And I said, sure. So I go over and I walk through the house, and these are two really educated, smart people. And they had interviewed with an agent from Smythe Kramer at the time. And here I am, this 16-year-old kid. And I said to them, the agent told them that the most they could get for this house was $450. And I said to them, I don't agree with that. I think this house is worth more. I think that agent is wrong. I said, you can't look at what other things have sold for. This house is unique. And it's sort of a house, it's one of those iconic houses that people are going to really key into. I think we should ask $489. And they said, okay. They said, we're going to go with you. So I call up the lady on Chesterton, and I said to her, do you have a list of all the people who came through the house? I told her to keep a list. She said, I do. I said, can I have the list? She said, sure. So the first thing I did is call everyone on the list. I said, hi, I'm Adam Kaufman. There's a house at North Park that you should look at. And 10 of the people came through the house. There was a doctor on the list from the Cleveland Clinic. Doctor walks in, sees the house, comes in right away and says, I love this house. The most I can spend is $450. Okay? And my people are like, that's awesome. We don't have to pay a commission. It's $450. You did what you said you were going to do. I said, oh, no, we're not doing that. Said there's 2 ads going in the paper, one in the Plain Dealer, one in the Sun newspapers. I think we got to wait. I just have a feeling. So anyway, Sunday morning, guy opens up his newspaper, and I put a picture of the house in, lived in Shaker on Dryden, so in Poets Corner, sees the picture of the house. It's the house he'd always loved since he was a kid. He comes over to the open house. He walks through the open house. You could tell right away he liked the house, goes through, leaves, comes back about 2 hours later. His wife walks through with them. They leave, and then 10 minutes later, the doorbell rings. And he walks in, and he sits down, and he has his checkbook with him, and he says to the seller, I absolutely love this house. I've loved it since I was a kid. He said, I want to buy it. He said, here's a check for $15,000 as earnest money. I'll offer you $500,000. And I looked at the seller. I said, yeah, that you're going to take. So,
Wait, you were 16?
16. And my dad, and it was final exams at US, my dad was ready to kill me because here I am wheeling and dealing. Now, I said to the guy, where do you live? He said, I live on Dryden and Shaker. I said, oh, take me over to see your house. So he takes me over to see his house. I walked through his house. They had just redone the kitchen. It's a great house. And he said, what do you think we can get? And I said, I think you can get $390. He said, Adam, nothing on our street is sold for more than $325. I said, trust me, you can get $390. So I called up the other guy who made the offer on North Park, and I said, I've got good news and bad news. I said, the bad news is someone else bought the house on North Park. The good news is I have a house for you that's you're gonna really like. Sure enough, he walked in and bought the house, $390. So that was sort of my entree into the luxury market before I was 18. The Smythe Kramer agent hated me. Joan Garfield, those were her best friends. She hated me. A lot of people hated me over those deals, but it was fun. So that's how I got started.
So let's kind of build on that, talking about pricing. You had a different pricing strategy than the other agent. When pricing a luxury property, what matters more? Data, timing, psychology, something else?
Ooh, good question. So I always say pricing is an art, not a science, especially in the luxury market. Listen, guys, if you're listing a house in University Heights on Charney, it's not that hard to figure out. If you're listing a house in a subdivision in Solon, Oakview 2, et cetera, it's not that hard to figure out. You run the square footage, you look at the price per square foot, how updated the house is, you can sort of figure out a price. Luxury is a totally different animal. And I'll be the first one to tell you, a lot of the times I get it right, sometimes I don't. And you've got to, when you go into a house, you've really got to look at the nuances of the house. Location, no matter what, is the most important thing in real estate, period. So always pay attention to the location, but really look at the appeal of the house. Look at how the house is going to present, okay? And think about, again, you need to know that the buyers that are out there, if you're in the luxury market, you kind of have an idea of who's out there, who's wandering around. And that way you can really come up with a price. And listen, there are times where I've walked into a house where my price is so much higher than what the seller was thinking. It's kind of funny. And there's other times where a seller has a much different number than I do in terms of what they can get for a house. And I've learned that, again, it's an art. So you've got to sort of test the market a little bit. Most of the time, guys, you're going to get it right. There are times where you're not going to get it right just because, you're looking at it through your eyes, or, there's something that, you might have overlooked, or it's just a surprise. You thought the house would sell right away. You thought that the buyers were going to go crazy for it, and for some reason, there's something that they're not keying into. But you have to figure out what that is quickly to fix it. But again, when you price a luxury home, when a seller says to you, what's the number to the penny? I never give someone a number to the penny. I give a range. I mean, I'm not a crystal ball. I say, this is the range which I think you're going to fall in. Here's the reason why. If we price it at the low end of the range, I think this house will sell immediately. If we go to the higher end of the range, we could sit a little bit. What's important to you? Do you want to test the market? Do you want an immediate sale? Feel them out. Figure out what they're looking for, what's important to them, and then go from there.
Before we move on to Jen, I'm just curious, when you say most of the time you get it right, sometimes you don't, is getting it right pricing it where it sells up front, or is getting it right really the ability to navigate it to get it sold?
No, it's not getting it sold right away. And that's the thing with luxury homes. Luxury homes are not going to sell immediately all the time. You know, they're special. They're in a category by itself. There is a real distinct match for each luxury home. And I say to a seller, don't get discouraged if your house doesn't sell right away. And there are times where I've said to a seller, this house I think is priced correctly. We haven't had the right buyer come through the door yet that appreciates it. When that right buyer comes through the door, they're going to pay the price. And luxury buyers know that homes can sit longer. These more expensive homes can sit longer on the market because they're special. So don't be afraid. If the house sits, don't be afraid. You know, you want to keep in touch with your seller and educate them. Now, if you have 5 buyers that come through the house and all 5 buyers say this house is grossly overpriced, I don't like it, then you have a problem. If they come through the house and say, I think it's beautiful, it's just not my, my jam, you know that you're going in the right direction. But there are times where I've sat on a house and I have not been afraid to sit on it. And sure enough, the right buyer comes along and bam, we get our price.
Love it. Jen, what about for you?
Yeah, I would.
Mr. Pricing.
Yeah, very similar. It's a range. It's always a range. You know, luxury is really tough. We're not talking about cluster homes. We're not talking about, these basic homes that there's a dozen that have sold on the street over the last 5 years. Each one is different. Each one has a different level of finishes. Each one is built differently, nuances, and I really think the psychology is important behind it, because you are walking through a home that you're figuring out who is that buyer and what are they willing to pay. And I agree. I think I've missed the mark. I'm obviously newer to the space, so there's been plenty of times where I've missed the mark. But it's important to understand how to navigate that with your client while keeping the confidence they have in you and continuing to communicate. Let's get this to the right place. And again, I agree. I think if you're getting positive feedback, you're headed in the right direction. You just haven't found the buyer. If you're getting the same consistent feedback over and over and over again, then definitely there's some nuances to navigating that feedback.
And it's tough sometimes. I mean, it's tough when you deal with these buyers and sellers that are these luxury buyers and sellers. You can be the best at your game. You could be number one. If they're not going to listen to you, and there are times where they don't listen. They have their own ideas, and no matter what you say, they're not going to listen. That's why sometimes it pays to be the second or third agent in.
We call that the second wife.
Because, it's like the second wife. Exactly. It's like the second spouse. By the time they get to the third spouse, they're like, I'm tired. Just whatever you want.
Whatever you want. We're good.
Yeah. But it takes a while to get there. And I've had that where, I no matter what I do, you just aren't going to win. I've gotten to the point now where I used to get really upset about it. Now I just cut bait and say, hey, you know what? Go waste someone else's time, not mine.
I think that's the lesson I'm learning too, is not taking it personally. You can't take it personal. No. As much as you really want to see that to the finish line, there's just times where it's like you've got to cut your losses and move on.
Totally, 100%.
So let's talk about negotiations, all that. Jen, we'll start with you. Tell us about a luxury transaction where it required high stakes negotiation.
Well,
we've had some.
It's when Adam writes both the offers. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, how about that? That's true.
That is very true. It is. I think I obviously don't probably have as many as he has to pull from his arsenal, especially when he started at 16 years old. However, the one that specifically comes to mind, it was just. It's a horse farm I sold. I think it was almost 2 years ago now. It was her last piece of property that she owned in the state. She has a very notable last name, very private woman. She tried to sell it by herself for a while. She went through multiple agents.
Including me.
So you know what I'm talking about. And she's just one of those clients who, it's the same thing. They're listening to you, but they're not listening to you, right? Because they have so many other people in their life that are advising them at that level. So it was more about, the negotiation was definitely between two very, distinct people who were both wanting to win, and there was no compromise involved, and it was about protecting her bottom line while not making her feel like I was forcing her. You know, I can't want it more than she does. It's not my money. And so it was really easing everyone inch by inch, and it was probably like a 6-week long negotiation. But it was inch by inch we got there, and at the end of the day, we just kept, you know, driving towards the bottom line for her and making her feel like we were working hard in her favor, and she was very happy at the end.
Love it. All right, Adam, give us a great
So I
story.
have a couple really good ones. I have lots of them, but I have 2 I'll talk about. So one was, I think I was 24 years old, 25, so this is a long time ago. Right when you got into the business, I think. So you remember the house I listed on Cable Knoll, the big brick one? It's on the left side of the street. So this is probably 1995, 96. The house was $1,450,000 at the time. That was like $3 million today. It was a huge amount of money. The seller I had was a character, to say the least. May he rest in peace now. Great guy, but a character, a real character. And he was Jewish. And the buyer that came along, and I had both sides of the deal, was a doctor, very prominent doctor, and he was from somewhere in the Middle East. So you sort of get the idea. And we start negotiating on this house, and let me tell you something. It is like the Middle East conflict. Like, they're both in it to win it, and here I am in the middle. So this is going on and on, back and forth, and I'm like, Charles, this is your buyer. This guy is the perfect buyer for this house. And you know, at this price point, in this market, in this year, you've got very few choices. They are literally duking it out. So here we go. Finally, we get down to the furniture. The guy wants furniture. And Charles is like, my house is for sale. I said, I'm not a fan of selling furniture either. I said, but let's get this done. And it is just every day, I'm like, this is getting to be annoying. So I finally called up Charles. I said, you know what? We're going to meet in person. And I don't usually do that. Back then, it was more common. I said, but the buyer and the seller, I'll be there. You two can duke it out in person. So I get the buyer over to the office, I get the seller over to the office, and here they go. And they start duking it out. And I am sitting there, and I'm trying to keep a straight face as the two of them are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We get the whole first floor done. The guy doesn't want any of his kids' furniture, but the master bedroom had just literally been redone, and it was beautiful. And the buyer says to the seller, and I want the furniture in the master bedroom. And he said, well, I'm not leaving. And he said, yes, you are, or I'm not buying the house. And I'm like kicking Charles under the thing. I'm like, so Charles is like, fine. He said, you can have the bed. He said, you can have the nightstands. You can have the Chase Lounge. And you can have the armoire. He said, the rug has been with my wife for 30 years. She loves it. It's going in our new house. She can't have it. He said, and I just bought that mattress. He said, it's the most expensive mattress they make, and you're not getting it. And the guy looks at him, and the guy says, I don't want the rug, but you're leaving the mattress. Wait, gets better. So Charles looks at the guy. He thinks, I'm watching him. He thinks, and he gets this big smile on his face. He looks at me, and he says to the buyer, I sleep on that bed and that mattress bare ass naked. Just like that. And I'm thinking, got him. The doctor gets quiet for about 30 seconds. He's thinking, and he looks at him and he goes, I flip it over on the other side. You leave it. So the mattress stayed. We got the deal done. The mattress stayed. I just recently had a negotiation, which was really interesting. And the agent on the other side was very emotional. And the buyer brought in a lawyer. And it offended the agent on the other side to the point of no return. And the deal went haywire. I mean, it just went haywire. She was beside herself. The buyer got amped up because she's beside herself, and there's this lawyer involved, and I let it, and my seller was like, oh my God. I said, just let's let it sit. Don't get upset, let it sit. Let everyone calm down. I let it sit for a week. I picked up the phone, and I didn't call the agent, I called the lawyer. And I said to the lawyer, I met this buyer, they absolutely love this house. This is their dream house. I said, I'm sitting here, I said there was a lot of stuff that went on. The lawyer said, I don't get it. He said, I got involved. They asked me to get involved. He said, I wasn't trying to, insert myself really. He said, these are first-time buyers. This is a very expensive house for young kids. I just wanted to help. He said, the other agent went nuts. And I said, I understand the other agent. I know how she is. I said, she got her feathers ruffled because she felt that these people weren't trusting her. And she's very, she's very proud and, she's been an excellent agent. I said, I'll tell you what, does your buyer want the house? He said, more than anything. I said, call the buyer back. I said, here's the contract. Let's get this done. We'll bring the other agent in when it's finished, okay? And he said, that's a great idea. I sold the house. The other agent got a full commission. Buyers are ecstatic. It worked. So sometimes when you have these luxury deals and these emotions get going, don't try to push it through when the emotions are high. Back off. Stop it. Let people calm down. Figure out what it's going to take to put it together, who the key player is in it, and go and get it done.
Love it. All right, Jen, what's one of the biggest mistakes that you see sellers make that cost them money in the long run?
I would say overall, probably not preparing the home. And I mean, when you're selling a home of like a certain...
But that's your fault.
It is my fault. It's always my fault.
No, seriously. I mean, if they're not going to listen to you, listen, I'd be the first one to blame myself.
I usually do, actually.
Yeah.
But,
No,
yeah.
you're good at getting it prepared.
I'm usually...
No, your house is shown nicely.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I usually am pretty good at it. There are people that, every once in a while you'll get one that says it's fine as it is. If they don't like it, then that's their prerogative. But when we're looking for an aspirational price, a home's condition should reflect the aspirational price. And so when buyers walk in and they see, nicks and dings and dirty counters and things that
100%
don't speak luxury, then I think that it impacts them negatively in the long run.
100%.
Adam, from your perspective?
Same thing. I mean, it's like make your bed in the morning, guys. If you know you have a showing, make your bed. Clean your front door. First impressions are key. The lawn should be cut. The landscaping should be manicured. Things should look good. I always say, when a buyer comes in a house, they're going on a first date. It's no different than going on a first date with a person. If you go on a first date with a person and the person shows up with a stain on their shirt and their teeth not brushed and their hair messed up, you're gonna be like, I don't wanna go on a second date with this person, okay? Same is true with the house, guys, and that's it. And that's why I always say to agents, when a buyer comes to see a house for the first time, don't say anything. Introduce yourself at the door, say hi, nice to meet you. If I can answer any questions, let them walk through the house. Let them get the feel for the house. Let them take it in. Okay, it's just like if a third person goes on a first date. If the third person goes on a first date and is interjecting themselves, guess what? The two people that are on the date aren't going to get to know each other because the person's going to be interjecting themselves. Agents are really bad at that. Agents interject themselves. They want to lead someone through. And I will be the first person to tell you, I say to him now, go stand outside. Like, go away. Let my buyer get the feel of the house, okay? They didn't come to see a show of you, they came to see the house. And that is the worst thing agents can do. Let someone feel the house. Let someone get to know the house. Walk behind them. Always walk behind the buyer. When you show houses to buyers, guys, walk behind your buyer. Their body language is going to tell you exactly how they feel about a house. When a buyer doesn't like a house or isn't feeling a house, they walk on the outside. They don't walk into rooms. They'll peek in the room and then they'll peek their head out. When a buyer likes a house, guys, they go immediately into the room and they go to the center of the room and they start turning in the room. Well, you know what they're doing. They're positioning themselves in that house. They're feeling themselves in that house, okay? When you see that going on, a light bulb better go off in your head and you better say to yourselves, okay, I got a hot buyer. This buyer really likes this house. Let them go through the house. Let them get the feel of the house. Watch what they're doing. Now, what I usually do is, again, I don't say anything. When they come down at the end, I say to them, seems like you really like this house. Do you want to go sit down in the living room? Do you want to go sit down in the backyard? You know, where did they spend the most time? If they spent the most time in the kitchen, say, you know what? Let me show you a couple of really cool things about this kitchen. You know, they're custom cabinets. Let me show you how all the drawers pull out. Let me show you how there's a built-in steam drawer, this, that. That's when you go in for the kill. But when you first see them in there, don't say a word. Let them feel it. Let them get the feeling. You'll know what they're thinking. Right?
You're not wrong.
Am I right about the tour?
You are right about the trip to Disneyland, I believe
Yes,
they call that.
I call that right, going to Disneyland.
Let's talk about building trust. Adam, obviously something you like excel at. How do you build trust quickly with high net worth clients?
I build trust with every client the same way. I am honest. I say what I think. And again, I'll say to someone, this decision is yours. Here are the pros, here are the cons. Always be truthful, guys. You know, don't say what they think you think they want to hear. Say what you think they need to hear. Be truthful, okay? You will build rapport very quickly with any client. Now, you got to know who your client is. You know, I learned years ago, I don't know, you remember we went to see Anthony Robbins and I went and took that course? I took a course with Anthony Robbins. It was a 5-day course. It was in San Diego. It was the best thing I ever did. And one of the things Anthony Robbins teaches you is you have to adapt your personality to the person that you're dealing with. So when you deal with high net worth clients, you have to adapt your personality to their personality. So if you have a high net worth client that is really verbose and boisterous and has a huge personality and is, you know, powerful, you better come in acting powerful and being powerful, because if you come in like a meek mouse, they're going to be like, get out of my way. They're not going to have any respect. So again, you need to understand, if you have someone that's quieter and more methodical, etc., you want to do it in a quiet, nice, methodical way. Maybe you write them an email. You know, you got to figure out how you're going to present what you want to present. But the most important thing is being honest. You want them to trust you, and you want them to know that you have their best interest in mind. And they're going to test you. Mm-hmm. They're going to test you right away. If they feel that you're just trying to sell them any old house because you want to sell it, they're going to pick up on it right away and they're going to fire you. I just got a client the other day that called me, and this is a huge buyer coming into Cleveland, tremendous buyer. I didn't have this buyer. This buyer was with another agent, and this buyer called me and they said, I want to ask you some questions. We're going to interview a couple of agents, etc. What do you think? And I immediately said, this house I think is not priced correctly, and I would have some concerns, and here's why. And called me back the next day and said, you're hired. And that's why, because immediately I built that trust. And that's the key. That's what you want to do. Be truthful. Be honest. Okay? They're hiring you for your value in terms of your information. And again, when the internet came into being, everyone thought that we were, as realtors, were going to be out of business. Now I see this whole AI thing, and it's the same crap all over again. Life repeats itself over and over. It's a circle. It goes around. Here we go with AI. Oh my God, realtors are going to be out of business. Guess what? AI is going to confuse buyers more than the internet confused buyers, and more than ever, they're going to run to an agent. They want someone who is their advocate. They want someone who they feel is going to help them get over the finish line. And what they want is their knowledge, their expertise, and their truth.
Jen, anything to add?
What he said? No, I'm just kidding. But I will say too, for me, because I don't have like the years of experience that Adam has yet, it's really important for me to also be confident. So I do a lot of market research, market knowledge, and that makes me feel a little bit more confident when I'm getting in front of these people. But it's the same thing. It's honesty. It's not trying to feel like a salesman. We're not car salesmen. We're not pushing something on them. They're looking to us for our trusted advisor and honesty. They are looking for someone to help them make a very important decision, and they have multiple people in their life that are also helping them do that. But if they bring you into the fold, they expect that from you. They expect honesty, they expect trust, and they expect you to advise them with their bottom line in mind.
Totally. Now, and let me just say something here so you guys understand. So Jen, and I'm going to give you a big pat on the back. Jen has done a great job, and she was newer in the business. And when we had that deal where I had 2 offers, etc., here's how Jen handled that. Jen, who didn't have as much experience as I did, said to me, Adam, how would you handle this? This is kind of a strange circumstance. What should we do? And she asked me, and do you remember that?
Yep.
And I was like, well, I said, this is crazy, but here's what. Ultimately, you represent the seller. Our deal is to make a deal where everyone's happy and may the best buyer win. But again, that's what she did. And she did an outstanding job. Don't be afraid to ask the agent on the other side, for their expertise and things. Okay, you're a team. Yeah. You're aligned. You have the same common goal. The way to put a deal together is to create a win-win situation. Happy buyer, happy seller, especially in these big houses. You got to have both people happy. But don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Call an agent who's got the listing. Call, whoever and say, listen, what's your seller's hot button? What's important to them? Is it price? Is it timing? There are sellers that are so attached to their houses, it's like letting go of a child. And, have your buyer write a note. Have your buyer tell the seller why they love their house so much and what it means to them. Those are all things that we should be doing. And I think most of the times agents fail to pick up the phone. They look at the other agent as the enemy. That's the adversary. That's the enemy. You can't do that. We're a team. We have the same common goal. Pick up the phone. Yeah. You do that. I do that. Yeah. We work together to get things done, and that's what you want to do. Work together. Yeah. Get it done. Take your ego out of it.
I'll say this. Everybody is busy. It is so tough to get agents to leave feedback on showings or, like you said, to pick up the phone. And if you look at the numbers, there's nobody as busy as Adam. And I've never had a property where Adam does not leave feedback. Oftentimes, like within 30 minutes of the showing.
He might still be there.
Yeah, he's usually like in the driveway. I've never done a deal or had a property where Adam hasn't called me or texted me. Same with Jen. And it's like you talk about like the camaraderie part of it and going for a common goal. It's like it is so frustrating when other agents cannot leave feedback on property, but Adam manages to every time. And you see it reflected in like the professionalism. It's incredible.
Josh is funny too because he knows me. Like I will hunt you down. Like you don't return my phone call or I will hunt you down. So one day he had a listing on Shaker Boulevard. It was a Saturday and I called him and he's like, oh my God, I haven't taken a day off in like 3 weeks. He goes, but I know you're gonna hunt me down. So what time do I have to meet you there?
But it's what I also know with Adam is like if he's calling you, it's for a reason. Like he's not calling for some asinine question like, can you tell me how many feet there are of septic line between there and the street? Like if he's calling, he has a buyer that is serious or a seller and it's like,
let's go.
Yeah.
Get the deal done.
Agreed.
Did any of you guys know Joan Lefkowitz? All right. So Joan Lefkowitz was an agent. She was such you want to talk about a lovely class act. She was the best. Her motto was you get the deal done no matter what. Joan would get you out of bed at 1:30 in the morning. Honest to God, if the seller said, if her seller called her at 1 o'clock and said, we thought about it, we're going to do the deal, she would call you at 1 o'clock. She would show up in her Cadillac with her mink coat on and a nightgown underneath, and she would get that deal done no matter what. And that's the thing. Our job, again, is to get it done. Listen, we're not cardiologists where someone's life is on the line. But there's a lot of money being spent. People, again, are putting their trust in you. And the most important thing is respond, guys. That drives people crazy. Return a call, return a text, return an email. Even if you say to someone, I'm out to dinner and I will call you back in an hour, but return that call, return that text, okay? As far as I'm concerned, with agents, there are agents that are not good at that. I put them on my bad list. I'm like, that's terrible because you're not doing what you should be doing. You're not doing your fiduciary job. And return calls, return texts. You want to get into the luxury market, you want to play with these luxury people, there is a reason why they're where they're at. And it's not because they didn't return texts or phone calls. They're at the top of their game for a reason, and you better be at the top of your game.
What I learned is nothing says luxury like a nightgown and a mink coat.
There you go.
All right, Adam, this one's just for you. After decades at the top, what has allowed you to sustain dominance in the luxury space?
You know what, guys? people ask me all the time, what's your secret? You know, what do you do? There's no secret. It's hard work. I get up, I'm the first one in every day, I'm the last one out every day. Hobie Hanna cracks me up because he lives in Pepper Pike and he drives by my office on Saturdays and Sundays. And he invariably, every weekend, will call me and he'll be like, I see you're at the office, thank you. And again, I walk around my office and I am in shock. It's a Saturday, no one's in the office but me. Where is everyone? They're not working, obviously. You know, they're not there, okay? It's a Sunday. Where is everyone? They're not working, they're not there. I work, guys, that's it. I love what I do. It is, to me, the greatest job ever. I've loved it since I was a kid. The day that I get up and I go and I say I'm going to work and I'm not going to have fun, I'm done. Game over. That's when I give it up, okay? But until then, I'm gonna work and I'm gonna work hard. And that's why I think I've been able to sustain, you know, the level of success that I have. It's because I actually work and I love it. And again, people are shocked. They'll walk into an open house on a Sunday, there I am, and they'll be like, oh my God, you do open houses? Absolutely, I do open houses. You run buyers? Absolutely, I run buyers. You're returning my phone call? Absolutely, I'm returning your phone call. All of those things matter. They really do. I also think that I generally, because of my years of experience, I think that I, understand the nuances. I'm very good, I think, at working with people, at figuring people's sort of psyche out. And again, the thing I'm going to tell you guys is, especially if you're entering the luxury market, is you're not going to please everyone, okay? Not possible. You just can't. Learn to not worry about that. That's what we talked about. If you have a seller that's difficult and you can't work with them, let them go. A long time ago, a client of mine who was brilliant said to me, I showed up one day and I was not in a good mood, and she said, what's wrong with you? She said, you're not your normal self. And I said, well, I've got this client, and I told her, she happened to be a psychiatrist, and she said to me, Adam, she said, how expensive is the house? I said, $800,000. She said, so it's about a $25,000 commission. I said, yeah. She said, is that amount of money gonna change your life? I said, absolutely not. She said, then why would you let that person rent space in your brain for free? Get rid of them. Go back to your office and fire them. And I did. And it's the first time I did it. And let me tell you, it was the best thing I ever did. And that's the thing, guys. Your job should be fun. You should love doing this. It should be a passion. It's a great career. You're really changing people's lives. You're bringing joy to people. You're doing something that is so invaluable. But again, if you're not having fun with someone and if they're not treating you the way you feel you should be treated, get rid of them.
I will add this in as well. Adam touched on it in one of the intro segments of the first questions. Adam's market knowledge and individual home knowledge is unparalleled in this space. When you talk to him about houses, there's no question, if you have a real estate conversation with Adam, why he's had the success that he's had. And it's for anybody that wants to be successful, striving for something like that, it is so impressive.
Well, thank you.
Jen.
Yes.
With what you're building now, what's something you're building that is going to allow you to sustain long-term growth in this space, besides Adam eventually retiring?
Just making best friends with Adam. I'm not from the area, so I don't have, the roots that run as deep as Adam's, as the Youngs. So my main focus is just building relationships, and like Adam said, meaningful relationships with people that respect you and respect your time and you want to do business with, and they want to do business with you, and taking those relationships and just pouring into them. That's really where my focus has started to go. And then, of course, soaking up as much knowledge as I can. I will say something that, is inspiring about Adam, and something I've started doing since I moved up here is attending a lot of these brokers' opens, these luxury brokers' opens. I think they're completely underrated, and not enough people come to them.
They don't show up.
Nope. And I love going to, whether you have food or not, I just want to see the house. I want to see the house, because when I talk to one of those good relationships that I'm working on nurturing, they're going to ask me about the house. They're going to ask me about, a high-profile listing. I mean, I want to know from firsthand experience that I've been in it, and I can intelligently talk to them about that. And that's how you continue to build the trust and their faith in you to refer you out to other people, and then the relationships just grow from there.
Guys, you got to know the market.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to be in the luxury market, if you want to play in this market, you better know the market.
Yep.
So if you go to a cardiologist and you say to the cardiologist, and you have to have heart surgery, and you say, how many operations have you done? The cardiologist says 2. And then you go to the cardiologist next door and you say, how many operations have you done? And the cardiologist says 1,000. Well, what cardiologist are you going to go to? Same is true with real estate. If you don't walk through these houses, if you don't understand these houses, if you don't know your market, okay, you are going to lose. Period. End of story. And that's how I built my career. I mean, I was 21 years old. I was 18 years old when I was licensed. I was 16 years old in high school. You know why people took me seriously? Because I had knowledge. I knew the houses, I knew the prices, I knew the people, I knew everything that was going on out there. When I go and sit down on a listing appointment, I can say to a seller, these 5 buyers are in the market right now. Here's who's going to come look at your house. Here's what we're going to have. And they are like, wow. And I mean, that's what you need to have. You need to have that knowledge. I can walk into a house that was for sale 20 years ago, and I can say to a seller, I like the fact that you got rid of the green, blah, blah, blah. I can tell them everything about that house. And they're like, oh my God, how can you remember that? They don't even remember it. But I could tell you Terry Young's house in Orangewood verbatim, what it was like. I sold it. But I mean, you gotta remember the stuff, guys. And when you go through a house, take it in. I happen to have a mind that works like that. It just remembers the stuff, but you've got to do it. If you're going on a listing appointment and the house was sold 5 years ago, go online and look at the pictures.
Yep.
Impress someone. You walk in, say, oh my God, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. You walk in like you've never been there, like a deer in headlights. They're going to be like, who is this idiot?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. There's easy stuff that you can do that's so important where you're going to look really impressive in that seller's eyes. Same with a buyer. When you get a buyer, you better know every house that's on the market. You better know the nuances of those houses, et cetera, because if you don't, they're going to get rid of you. They think they have more knowledge than you do. They're going to get rid of you. That buyer I told you about, that big buyer that called, he mentioned a house, and I said to that buyer, you have 3 kids, right? And he said, yes. I said, that second floor is not adequate for 3 kids. And he said, you know what? I'm thinking about it now. You're right. That creates trust, and it shows him that I know the market and I know the inventory, et cetera.
All right, I got one more scripted question, then we'll open it up to the group. Jen, we'll start with you. For the agents in this room who didn't come here just to hear great stories, but want to grow into the luxury space, what's one tactical move they should make immediately and one mindset shift they need to adopt?
Well, I think we just talked about it. I mean, I think we've talked about it almost this entire time. Is educate yourself, your market knowledge. Whether you're from here or not, you should be the expert. Getting in the homes, being able to intelligently speak about the homes. You shouldn't need an MLS in front of you to talk to somebody about a home that's on the market in the area or that just sold. And then the second thing is, I personally believe luxury is a mindset, and you don't have to be able to afford a luxury home to sell luxury homes. You just have to understand the market, have confidence, and be able to build the trust with the clients that you're looking to attract. And I would figure out who that is.
Love it. Adam?
Well, I'm going to deviate off of that a little bit. I think you need to put yourself in the right places. You need to be where luxury buyers and sellers are.
Yeah.
Okay, now, what did I do when I was young? I was on a lot of charitable boards, and the people that I met on those boards were the clients that I wanted to attract. I positioned myself in the right places. I joined a country club. I go out to eat a lot, and when people go out to eat with me, they know that for the first 30 minutes, I'm working the room. So anybody I know even a little bit, I'll go up to and say hi, because immediately they're gonna launch into real estate. It happens everywhere. People are fascinated by real estate. So-and-so on my street sold their house, so-and-so listed their house. That is an in right away, guys. You have an in, and you are gonna be able to sell yourself and sell your knowledge. So you wanna place yourself where these people are, okay? That's what's so important. And again, when you sit open houses, put yourself in an area that you want to market and farm. Be there every Sunday. They're going to get to know you as the expert in that area. So that's how you can sort of build yourself up and enter that market and create that kind of mystique that you want to create. Do your homework on people, guys. When you go out on a listing appointment or you're working with a new buyer, Google them. Use ChatGPT. That's what it's great for. Find out about them. Find out what boards they're on. Find out what charities are important to them. Find out what their kids' ages are. Find out everything about them. Look at pictures of them on Facebook. How do they dress? Okay? Match your attire. If they're very conservative, if you show up non-conservative, they're not going to feel comfortable. If you show up conservative, they're going to feel comfortable. If they're not conservative and they're more, out there, don't show up super conservative because then they're going to feel uncomfortable. You want to know who you're dealing with, know your clients, know what's important to them. If you're going on a listing appointment where they're in their 70s and they're old school, wear a nice dress. Don't come in a pair of jeans. I'll come in a sport coat and I'll dress very conservatively and nicely. If I'm going somewhere where they're in their 20s or early or mid 30s and I see in every picture that they're dressed in jeans and a casual shirt, I'm coming in jeans and a casual shirt because that's what they're going to feel comfortable with. Do your homework. The biggest mistake people make is they don't do their homework. And it's so easy to do now. You can find out so much about someone.
This was amazing. I don't have any other scripted questions. Would love to spend the rest of the time opening it up to you all. There's got to be some great questions that you guys have for Adam and Jen. Yes, please.
Do you think that economic factors like inflation and interest rates affect the luxury market at all?
Not as much. Not as much. Again, buyers that are in a higher price range can adjust their sort of economic factors by putting a bigger down payment down, et cetera. So no, does it affect them as much as first-time home buyers, et cetera? No. Do they pay attention to it? Yes. It's very interesting, but when you watch markets and you can tell when the high net worth buyer is really going to go out there and start buying. You can see what's going on. All kidding aside, watch people with their cars. I always pay attention to that. When I see my clients start to all of a sudden buy 2 new cars, and I know, okay, things are good. Or they're going to Europe for 2 weeks and they're going here and that their business is doing well, etc. Plant the seed. Think it's time to maybe move? Want a bigger house? Plant the seed, guys. That's what you have to do. But you got to watch the nuances. All of a sudden, if the wife shows up with a new 6-carat diamond on her hand, things are good. Things are going well. So you know when to plant that seed. And again, invariably people love where they live, but one of the things when business gets good, if you plant that seed about buying a new house, it'll get planted quickly. And they'll all of a sudden be like, oh yeah. Or if their 2 best friends buy a new house, they're moving. So as soon as that happens, it's monkey see, monkey do. So as soon as the friend starts buying, they're moving. So when you see the friend buys a house, time to move, because they're going to want to, people like to keep up with they call it keeping up with the Joneses, but people follow sort of what other people do. So when it's time to sort of get on that.
Yes, please.
You touched a little bit on, mirroring your clients with what you wear, but do you think as a luxury agent, your appearance or your car or coming off luxury yourself, is there what kind of correlation do you think?
That's a great question. So I drive a Range Rover. The Youngs copied me. They all drive black Range Rovers like me.
You guys didn't know this. Adam was the first person, only person ever to drive a Range Rover.
Yes, I was, but flattered. That's
the car of the
copying
East
someone
Side.
is the greatest flattery you can do.
Yours is white.
That question is so great. So if, again, you are dealing with someone who is very reserved and sort of laid back, you got to come more reserved and laid back. So I might take my watch off. I might take off a bracelet I wear. I do pay attention to that. That's very important. So I'll tell you another really quick story, an Anthony Robbins story. I went and spent 5 days with him, and it was about mirroring someone because people are comfortable with who they're comfortable with. And he told a story, and then I used it. And I'll tell you the story real quickly because it's the best. It was the absolute best. So Tony Robbins was writing his book, Awaken the Giant Within. He lived in San Diego in Del Mar, in the Del Mar Castle, and he was going to Palm Springs on the weekend because he had younger children at the time and he needed a quiet place to sort of write this book, and he was staying in a hotel. And about 5 or 6 weeks into it, he said, you know what, this is dumb. I love it here. Why don't I buy a house here instead of, staying in a hotel every weekend? So he said, I made the mistake, and I called the real estate office, and he said, and I asked for this agent whose name I had seen, and I got the agent. She never asked me a question about myself, didn't do any homework about me, put me in the car, and drove me to all of her own listings and said, wow, these are great deals. These are great deals. He said, well, I didn't want a great deal. He said she wasn't getting me at all. And he said I was getting frustrated. So he went back and he called his office and he got his assistant on the phone and he said to her, give me a list of everyone who's taken my course in the past 2 years that's in Palm Springs. She gave him a list. And he said, okay. He said, I want you to call these 2 people. They both were interesting to him. And one of them was a young guy who was like 28 years old at the time. And he said that the agent called him and said, I have this client, Tony Robbins, blah, blah, blah. And the guy said, is it the Tony Robbins? And she said, well, it's the motivational speaker. And he was like, oh God. Okay. So he hung up the phone, and within 20 minutes, his assistant calls him back. She says, Tony, this guy's a total nutcase. Tony said, why is he a nutcase? He said, do you know that this guy called me back and started asking me questions about why you want to meet with him, and he wanted to know why you're in Palm Springs? Tony Robbins said, he's not a nutcase. He's doing his homework. He's doing what I taught him to do. Find out about much about the person as you can. Know who you're dealing with. Tony was like, I love this guy. We're going to use him. So meanwhile, the next day, he goes to the office and he says to meet with the guy, and he says the guy walks in. He says it was like he was seeing himself. He was dressed like me. He said he was talking like me. He was beating his chest. And he says, he sits me down and he says, I understand you're writing a new book. That's so exciting. I took your course. I can't wait to hear more about your book. He said, tell me about what you want. What is it that you want? What's important to you? And he said, I want something that's magnificent. And he said, with that, the kid looked at him, and the kid said, what's your definition of magnificent, Mr. Robbins? Because everyone has a different definition of what they think is magnificent. And he said, a view. I want an unobstructed view. And the kid said, great. He said, give me a few minutes. I'm going to put some things together. He said, the first house the kid takes into is like $25 million. He said the view was unbelievable, but he said it's a weekend house. I didn't need to spend $25 million. But the kid was on the right track. He said then the second house he takes them to is in a community, a gated community. There's houses right next door to each other. They're all lined up, and there's a wall behind the house as you walk in. And Tony says to himself, oh my God, is this kid like losing it? And the kid doesn't say a word. He's just quiet. And Tony was like, no, this is not what I want. Well, what he was doing is the juxtaposition. He was putting himself in the right frame of mind. The third house they go to, Tony says the door opens up. He says there's a solid glass wall, 30 feet long, and the kid puts his arm around Tony and goes, God, I can see you sitting in that room writing your book. And Tony said, I got had in my own game. That dumb kid sold me the third house I looked at. He said, and it worked. He said he did everything right. So I get home from the course. I get called by a guy who owns multiple car dealerships. All of you know who he is. And he lived in an expensive house. And he was very gruff, and he was rough, and he got me on the phone, and the first thing he did was tell me how stupid realtors are. These realtors are all so stupid, blah, 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 blah. And he's going on and on and on about how dumb realtors are, et cetera. And this one, and this one, and this one, and he's doing his whole spiel. And I said, okay. I listened, and I said, I'd like to set up an appointment so I can come meet with you in person, walk through the house, et cetera. So I go out and I meet in person with the guy, and I know what I'm dealing with. And I'm like, what do I have to lose? I'm going to use the Tony Robbins approach. So I sort of pick up the same kind of stuff, and we're sitting, and I'm watching him, and we're going through the house, and he's, of course, telling me how realtors are dumb, et cetera, et cetera. And then we sit down in the living room, and he's in front of me, and his wife is over to the side of me, and he looks at me, he goes, well, what do you have to say, Adam? I said, there's 3 things I have to say. Number 1, I said, the reason why you're in this position is because you keep telling realtors how dumb they are and you're scaring them. I said, they're hearing what they think you want to hear. I said, you're not hearing what you need to hear. I said, secondly, I said, I don't know anything about cars. I can tell you I get screwed every time I go to buy a car because I don't want to take the time and the patience that it takes to have to investigate and to have to negotiate with the salesman. I do that every day for everyone else. I buy the car. I said, when it comes to real estate, I know what I'm talking about. I said, and if you will allow me to use my knowledge and my expertise on your behalf, we're going to get this done together. He said, what's the third thing, Adam? I said, if you're being an asshole, I'm going to tell you you're being an asshole. He got up, didn't say anything. He got up and walked out of the room. His wife looked at me. She said, how the hell did you figure him out as quickly as you did? You have a friend for life. He walked back in the room with a pen, and he said to me, where do I sign? And guess what? That house sold in 3 weeks, and every time I called him, he'd say, what do you think? What should we do? I had gained his confidence. He trusted me. Now, if I'd gone in as this meek and mild little thing, he would have told me I'm a dummy and kicked me out, like he did everyone else. So know your clients. It works, guys. It really does. It works.
Love it. Let's open up one last question. Who's got a great question?
I do. I'm curious, you're at the top of the industry and reflecting on the career that you have and in the past. Like,
Bye, everyone.
What are some of the habits that you built over time that you look back and say, you know what, I'm so glad that I implemented these?
Great question. So I met a guy by the name of Kevin Reese when I was...
Can you repeat the question?
So the question is, what are the habits you've adopted over time that worked for you, that you really are glad you adopted and worked for you? It's such a great question.
I thought this was for Jen.
Oh.
Scotty already knows all my habits.
Is it for you? Go ahead.
No.
So I met a guy by the name of Kevin Reese years and years ago. He was the top agent in Minneapolis, and he taught me so many great things. The first thing he said to me is, do what you're great at. What you're not great at, hire someone to do. And that's what I did. So I have a very small team, okay? Everyone works differently. I have always been repeatedly asked, why didn't you build a mega team? I don't want to manage realtors. Love you guys, but not what I want to do. I like the personal interaction with the clients. That's what I love. So I hired people to do the stuff that I didn't like to do the paperwork, to do the behind the scenes stuff. The other thing that he taught me is every $15 million worth of business, you really need to add an assistant. Because again, you're going to lose track of what you're really good at if you're trying to manage too many things. So I would say focus on what you're really good at, what your strengths are, and hire people to do the things that aren't your strengths, that you can teach someone to do. That easy. And those are, I think, the important habits.
Awesome. Thank you. Jen, anything you'd like to add?
Come on. Let's go.
I mean, I think it's consistency too.
Totally.
Consistency. Get out of the mindset of the 9 to 5. We're not a 9 to 5 job. We work nights, we work weekends. I think it's just being consistent with your habits. I will say the one thing that it's just a personal thing for me, but I get up really early. My favorite hours are between 5 and 8.
You get up at 5 in the morning?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I love it because I will say, Ryan asked me the other day, what are your most productive hours? And I said 5 to 8.
Wow.
I get a good workout in, and then I can get...
Love it.
No one's up. No one's bothering you. Everyone's still sleeping probably. And I get through emails. I get through my task list for the day. I mean,
That's awesome.
That's been my best habit thus far.
I'm sound asleep at 5 in the morning, FYI.
A lot of different ways to approach it. All right, this was incredible. Adam, Jen, thank you both.
Yeah.
That was awesome.